take just a minute, Tom, and talk about the policy issues and controversy of privatizing prisons.
It is deeply philosophical to a lot of people who think that somehow we are doing something unsavory and making a profit off people who are incarcerated. It actually happened in this country 100 years ago when they were hired out for work, minimum security. The ACLU fought me every day, everywhere on the issue that was unconstitutional. Never put forth an argument. I'd already had that researched right off the bat by Tribune Sturdivant and by Sam's firm. And so the Constitution didn't anticipate such a thing, so it hadn't been thought of. And so that was the fundamental issue over which we fought. The rest of the time it was just politics. The unions against me. And the way the company developed, it developed in the Sun Belt. It didn't matter when I went northeast or upper Midwest, it didn't matter how much money I could save. It didn't matter how much better I could run the prison. We weren't union. We didn't have unions. The company now has a few union facilities, but the unions aren't as strong as they were back in the day when this was going. So it was fought over. A lot of people just find it personally abhorrent without being able to give you a good reason. Mm-hmm. But nobody ever came up with a legitimate reason why you shouldn't do it. Prisoners are better off with us. I always said if your son went to prison, you'd want him to go to one of ours because we were totally accountable. We were totally accountable. That's, by contract and by having people on site who work for the government and having to adhere to, and they're all ACA accredited. Good. None of them were when I started. None of them.
Wow.
Right.
So what was it like being, did you ever think you weren't going to make it during the
I never, ever thought we weren't going to make it. Took us 7 years to make a profit, but I knew this was the right thing to do, and instinctively so did the investors. We just had to get over that critical mass question.
Once you made it, what was it like being the CEO of a public company?
While I was there, I was on the road 4 days a week. So for me, it was just how big can I grow this thing? How fast can I run before they pass some law or do something that is prohibitive? I was never in the office running the day-to-day operations. Don Hutto ran the operations side. Doc ran the finance and administrative side, and I talked to him on the road. I developed the media took a big interest in it. The media accelerated our growth substantially because Panama City came out of being on 60 Minutes in a favorable way. Or the Today Show, I got to debate. They always put a college professor or an ACLU lawyer against you, and I won.
And did your legal training help you with that?
Helped a lot. It helped a lot. The constitutional issue, they would say it before I got there, but they wouldn't say it to my face because they did not want that idea shot down in a public forum. So a lot of the resistance was there before we got into the spotlight of the public arena, and they wouldn't make the same arguments. They'd just say basically it's not right. It's not right for these. They'd say you're going to cut corners. And I'd say, well, do you believe in contract law? Contracts provide for every single 450 separate items that we do in every prison. And it's philosophical. There's no other real barrier.
And how long did you stay as the CEO?
I went to Australia in '94.
Tell us about why.
We got a prison in Australia, and then I got 2 more down there. We had an Australian, we were Chubb Securities was one of our partners down there, and we had a construction company down there, and we were in Adelaide. We were in, not in New South Wales, but we were in Brisbane. We had 2 in Brisbane. And we lived in Brisbane for that time. And then I worked in New Zealand while I was down there. And we got one in the UK. We sold when we ran into the turmoil around the turn, around 99, 2000, Sodexo was a French company. It was a 25% partner. We sold the European and Australian division to Sodexo. We weren't making any money on it because the laws of the state of the countries required us to have 50% partners. So we put up all the capital, faded all the heat, did all the work, and then split whatever was left over. So, but I went to Australia because I wanted a break. I had been running pretty hard. I did not want to run the company. I was already beginning to think about I wanted to do something else. And Doc wouldn't take it, but after he had it unofficially for 6 months while I was over there, when I came back, he took it.
And who went with you to Australia?
My entire family.
Mm-hmm.
Took my entire family, and my guys over there got us a house in Brisbane, and we lived in Brisbane and traveled to New Zealand. We traveled to every part of Australia, and absolutely, I mean, as a result of that, my daughter went back to Australia to graduate school. She met a guy, her husband, in graduate school, who was from Mexico City, over there to get an MBA. And my granddaughter, their granddaughter, was born in Sydney.
Well, let's stop right there and tell us about your children and grandchildren quickly.
Oh, are we
Yep.
stopping or not?
No, I meant.
I'm sorry.
Stop the story.
Okay.
Stop the story and talk about.
Jeb is my oldest son, John Etheridge Beasley. He married Melissa Bean, who he'd had a crush on since his first day of high school. She went to Western Kentucky, and he graduated from Belmont. They have 3 children. Noah Wilson, the Wilson travels through. His second son, Samuel Ethan, has Down syndrome and is the superstar of the family. Their daughter is Olivia Lee. Because of Ethan's Down syndrome, we're at Franklin Road Academy, which has a program called Heart to Heart, which is they have from the high school down to Ethan's age, they have 5 children there, specifically with Down syndrome, and it's just, they mainstream them. It's fabulous. Right. My second son, Matt, worked for an international advertising. He went to Chapel Hill, graduated over there, and went to work for British American Tobacco, and then for G2, an international advertising agency. And he lived in Tokyo and then London, and came back to New York, and then went to Owen, and after he did that, he married the daughter, Louise Riley, the daughter of Steve Riley, who's a practicing trial lawyer here in town. And they have Laura Elizabeth, who was born in London 8 months ago. And Kristen and Louise have just bought a new house. They're back here in Nashville, and they have Viviana Emmeline, which I can barely struggle through, and Oscar Gabriel. And everybody's back here, and everybody's happy and healthy. And
do you all travel as an entire group occasionally? We travel at least once a year, and every other year we try to go out of country. We try to do. We have a family partnership, and we try to use it to I think travel was the best thing I ever did for my children. Yeah. We traveled a lot when they were growing up, and I want them to have their children travel. So when did you sever your ties, or have you, with CCA? I came back in. We ran into some obstacles with trying to get it. At one point, Doc had created a situation where we had 2 public companies on the New York Stock Exchange. We had PZN, which was a REIT company, and we had the operating company, and 3 parts of that were private. It was a very complex arrangement, and it was too aggressively pitched for what it could do, and it almost collapsed. And so the board brought me back in because they were ousting Doc because it had gotten too aggressive. Doc's son was running PZN, and it had gotten in a mess, and it was closer to catastrophe than probably it ever surfaced. And what we did is we collapsed it back into a C Corp,
and we sorted out with the banks. Basically said, if you want to take us under, you can have this prison and you can have this prison. They didn't want them. Right. But Doc had grown it very rapidly in a brief period of time with a lot of money, a lot of REIT money. And I suppose I'm going to tell you this because this is what happened. I was interviewing people to be Doc's replacement. And I wasn't getting anywhere, and information was leaking out, and I finally had found a guy, and I'm lying in my bed one night, and I just had a catastrophe on a guy that I'd offered the CEO position to, and I'm lying there, and I'm looking up my eyes. I said, Lord, I need some help. And I had interviewed John Ferguson prior to that, and said, John, you can't, your resume's not big enough. Sunquist wanted me to interview him, and you can't do this because they need... Wall Street's sick of us. They don't want another member of the Tennessee Mafia. But I lay there, and while I'm looking up at the ceiling, the job description changed in my mind. I said, I need somebody who can look the media in the eye every day and give them bad news and not feel the need to embellish it. I need somebody who understands government budgeting cycles, and I need somebody with a good financial background. Ferguson had turned around a bank in Germantown. Ferguson had been F&A for Sunquist, and the media called him Honest John because he never expanded on anything that was bad news. So I got up out of bed at 6 o'clock, and I called the governor's residence, and I said, I know he's left. You guys know where he is. And they found him in Florida. He flew back. I told him the story. He said, I believe in divine intervention. And I said, well, it's your job. He came back and he cleaned my plow on the employment contract. But he was just right. He was exactly right. He had John's not a salesman. John is a very methodical, piece by piece. And Bill Andrews had been on the board, and Bill used to fight with Doc a lot. And Bill has been on like 15 public company boards. And I went to Bill and I said, Bill, I want you to put the board together. And it can't have anybody on it that's been involved with the company before. And so Joe Russell was the only exception, but Joe Russell was the guy that made me come back into the company. I said, Doc's my best friend. I'm not coming back. It's just going to have to fail. But when we realized that at that time we had 14,000 employees, they were going to tank with it. And so that's what happened. Joe Russell is a major reason CCA survived.
And that was in the late 90s?
That was 99, 2000.
Right. Okay.
It went on for a little while, but ship was righted very rapidly, not because of any magic potion. It was just had been constructed in such a way that it couldn't survive. I mean, you had all those operations had to feed the REIT shareholders. 95% of the operating profit had to be paid out, and so you were to hit the numbers that had been forecast. They were stealing from operations basically, and operations kept the company alive by managing for 6 months to get by on very little capital, and.
So during all of that time, you were on the other side of the table. What would you say about, what did you learn about using lawyers in the best possible way and selecting lawyers?
I have always, the one thing that I learned about being a lawyer is hire the very best people that you can hire. And that's what we always tried to do. That's what we tried to do here. Sam had been a friend forever, but during that process, we always had Doc had spent some time on Wall Street while he was at Harvard. He had worked summers on Wall Street, and Doc was very, very bright. We had very high-profile Washington law firms and very high-profile New York law firms. I mean, we didn't try to save any money around the kind of legal representation we had, and consequently, that's why we got out of that deal so quickly and so in basically whole. We were one day we were going under, a month later we're back ginning, because it was just sorting out some problems that could be solved with good representation and good strategy. And so I'm a big believer in doing that, and I've always done it. And I've done my own personal life planning around the best estate attorney I could find, and I've been doing it since I started.
All right, let's take now post-CCA. What have you been doing? I mean, this has been several years.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing venture capital deals. We sold Infrastructure Corporation of America that Butch Ely talked me into getting into a long time ago, which was doing really, really well until we got no highway bill and the road builders started bidding on work that they wouldn't have done. And so we made a quick exit out of that. After I say quick, we'd been in it 11 years. I was part of a company called Horizon National IPA, which was started off as group purchasing for higher education, and because higher education didn't care what it cost, we went to municipalities. I say we had a fabulous CEO, a young man named Todd Abner, and we got like a 7X on the sale of that company to a national firm. And I've done 2 private education companies. Did one with Dr. Roy Nix and Archie Dykes, East Tennessee State Chancellor, and we went through $7 million and never could get the thing off the ground. I realized that I'd not done the right model, and I got Randall Richardson to become party chairman to learn how to deal with the media, and we started a company when he got out of there. And we've got 32 schools in Florida and 1 in North Carolina on our way, and we're for profit. And it's called Accelerated Learning Systems, and we've changed the model over time, each time modifying it. But these are kids that dropped out of school. There's money for it, and they're coming back, so they're highly motivated. We can advance them 3 years for every year they're in seat. So those are the kinds of things. I'm working on one now that it's fascinating, but it's almost beyond my ability to. It's built around a very sophisticated economic model. Anyway, that's what I do, and there's a venture capital group called Mountain Group that's got us in several things. That's how I got into my favorite thing right now, which is Silicon Ranch, Governor Bredeson's solar energy company, which I think is brilliant.
Now, you've also, though, been very involved in various charities and volunteer work. Tell us a little bit about your favorites.
I am a Republican environmentalist in the biggest sense. I'm a tree hugger. I've been a tree hugger all my life. I came back from Vietnam, and our trees were, on a dairy farm, your cattle wipe your trees out. And it just shocked me because I've been gone for several years, actually, when I got out of the Army. And so I planted over 250 acres of hardwoods up in Smith County. And my uncle said, your damned ancestors worked their tails off to clear this land, and here you are planting these sticks back out on there. But he would like it now. I mean, I've got walnut trees that are produced. I've been doing it for 25 years.
Wow. And
I was on the Nature Conservancy board for a while, and I never went on the board, but I was the second farm into the land trust, and I love the land trust. Another Bredesen concept.
Cumberland University?
My mother started there, and my cousin became chairman of the board, Robert Carver Bone. And while she graduated from MTSU, we thought it appropriate to do some scholarships over there. So Lewis and Alma Catherine and I funded a number of scholarships at Cumberland 20 years ago.
And what about this stint as civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army? Just give us another little bit about that.
Basically, it was staying engaged with Fort Campbell for public policy reasons in Nashville, and it was really fun because you really got an inside look at what was going on in the Iraq War, and I think I told you that story earlier about that young man. It was a very, very, they put you on there because if they need you in Washington, you have to crank up and get on a plane and go to Washington. They never called on me for that, but they called on me for stuff related to the soldiers over there, I guess because of Vietnam.
And then you've touched on, but tell us more about your scholarship program at Vanderbilt Law School for veterans.
3 deans ago, and my memory fails me on who was dean at the time, but I went over and talked to him about it, and he was totally enthusiastic. And they hired a West Pointer who was one of the legal counsels at the Saddam Hussein trial. And I said, I want to do this, but I said, I don't know how to work out how they're selected after I'm dead. And because I know that frequently becomes a problem. And I said, I don't want to select them, but I want to see their resumes, and and we get together once or twice a year with the students. His name is Mike Newton, and so he spends the summers at The Hague. He wrote a book 2 years ago about how much force should be applied in any given military, proportionate response in a military circumstance. It's really a wonderful book. He said basically the book about what was it, lone survivor, where the child, the sheep herder child came up. He told me if they had read his book, they would have had to shoot that boy. I mean, that's basically what it's about. But he lectures at The Hague. He works at The Hague. He gets jobs for these young Vanderbilt students over there, and he presides over, with the dean, the selection. And it's gone on for over 10 years, and we've got a lot of graduates around. Some of them are hired here in town, and I'm thrilled with it. I'm thrilled with it. I've got a crut for more.
And you obviously love to travel.
I love to travel.
And you read newspapers?
I am a current news guy. I spend far too much time on my iPad and my phone, and I do the Wall Street Journal. But I've canceled the Tennessean 4 times in my career, and the last time, the guy that started the Heart to Heart program out there is now the new DA. So I gave him a big check. He and I don't agree philosophically, but I'll love him forever over that.
Glenn Funk.
Tennessean ran an editorial endorsing the other guy, whom I did not know, but I knew his brother. And he said, the red flag for us in this endorsement for not endorsing Funk was he accepted a big check from Tom Beasley, which is a conflict of interest. My wife said, that's the last time that Tennessean is coming in our door. It was so stupid. It was so completely wrong. But so I do the Wall Street Journal online, and I scan the financial news every day. I've got on my iPad.
So what's next for Tom Beasley?
I really, really want to not do more. I want to travel more. Wendy and I took a cruise up the upper Mississippi 3 weeks ago, which was delightful. We're going through the Panama Canal. I was engaged in Panama, so it's the first time she's let me go back to Panama in January. And we're going through, in July of next year, we're going to do the Snake River and the Columbia River for 8 days. And those things they're great trips. She and I are the youngest people on the boat.
Great. Thank you, Tom Beasley.
Thank
what
you.
a great afternoon
Thank
together.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it.